Yo, what's going on, guys? Dr. Ethan Turner here with the Fantasy Headliners, and it's time for your Week 5 Injury Update show. As always, every single week of the season, I'm going to be coming in here giving you guys some injury updates for your favorite fantasy players. And if that sounds like something you want to have notifications on for, you should, because you need to know about these injuries each and every week. So make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button so that you always get the Injury Update show. As always, this injury show is brought to you by our boys over at Fantrax. They got an amazing fantasy app that is no fluff, no thrills. It's just fantasy. And that, I think, is how apps should be. It should just be whatever you're trying to do. I don't need any icons or I don't need any side quests in my fantasy football apps. I just want my fantasy teams to just be there. And that's what Fantrax does. If you're into fantasy hockey, baseball, basketball, doesn't matter. Fantrax has you guys covered. Make sure when you download the app, use the code Headliners to let them know that we sent you. But let's get into it. Our Week 5 Injury Update show. All right, as always, we got to start with the worst part of the show, which is a moment of silence. This is something that we do whenever a guy gets hurt and they're not going to be coming back this season. They are having a moment of silence. And this week, sadly, that guy is Javonte Williams, running back for the Denver Broncos. Had an ACL tear, but not just your typical ACL tear, okay? He also tore his LCL, had a posterior horn tear, which is basically the back part of his meniscus. Both of those things actually prolong his recovery time. So you're looking at, normally with an ACL tear, about 9 months, but with an LCL injury and a meniscus injury, you're probably looking more at about 11 to 13 months before we see Javonte Williams back at full speed. I think this is a situation where he might start out on the PUP to begin next season. It's way too early to tell, but either way, pour one out for Williams. Moment of silence. Javonte Williams done for the year. Moving on, every single week, I promise that I am going to be giving and holding myself accountable. I'm going to be giving a little bit of a recap on how my week last week went. Week 4 was kind of up and down. I had an 84% on my in-out calls last week, 86% on the year, though, so I'm still pretty happy with that. Almost getting to 9 out of 10. That's pretty good, not knowing what's happening Friday or Saturday. Did have some misses, though. Chris Godwin did manage to play. Didn't think that he was going to. Only had 9.5 points in half PPR, was the wide receiver 33. Not exactly a great week for Godwin, but he did play, did get good volume. From a target perspective, I think he's safe to play moving forward. Another guy I missed on is CMC. He had a big week. I'm not going to lie. 21.3 half PPR points, was the RB9 on the week in that scoring format. He returned to practice on Friday after I'd already recorded, so I don't really think it's fair that I'm getting this as a knock, but technically I did think that he was going to miss, so I will take the L here. CMC, if he's playing, you know that you just have to play him. You can't risk him sitting and blowing up on your bench, which he would have done had you sat him last week. Harrison Butker got ruled out on Saturday. I thought there was maybe a chance he would play, but it sounds like he tried to practice Wednesday, and then actually the ankle injury got worse. I'll talk about him a little bit later, but just know I did technically think he was going to sit last week, but he did get ruled out on Saturday, so I'm not going to be taking any flack for that one. You should have known before you sat your fantasy lineup Sunday morning. And then Alvin Kamara. Now this one, okay, give me a little bit of a breather here, okay? I don't think anybody expected Alvin Kamara to sit after he played in week 3. This happens. Sometimes you just get those last minute guys that just, they get ruled out and you're not expecting it, and it just sucks. It sucks even worse because he was playing in London. I feel like the team should have let us know on Saturday night that he was not going to play. I did say he was going to be a risky RB3 if he played, so technically I was right, but this is a great example on why you guys need to be subscribed and become members of the Fantasy Headliner crew, because our Discord chat knew that Alvin Kamara was going to be missing. I put out alerts in our Discord channels that Alvin Kamara was ruled out. I think I got up at like 5 o'clock on Sunday morning to give those updates. So become a member, join the Discord, and you'll get those last minute updates from the doc. But Again, sorry, technically that was a miss. That's my bad. I did have some hits last week, though, in the injury show. This isn't just an injury update show. I'm going to give you guys some fantasy advice, too. Dameon Pierce, RB6 on the week in half PPR. One of my defensive nugget calls last week, he was going up against a banged-up defensive line, and Dameon Pierce just always finding a way to make himself relevant in the last couple weeks. Let's see if he can keep it up this week. TJ Hawkinson. If you watched the injury show last week and weren't starting TJ Hawkinson, that's on you. I told you that I expected Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift to both be out, that TJ Hawkinson should see an increased workload. Now, I didn't think he was going to blow up and be the tight end one on the week, but either way, I did warn you guys that offense was going to be hurting, except for Hawkinson. And then James Conner, I told you guys to sit him. He's not healthy. He's not at 100%, only 9.2 half PPR points. That was a reasonable call. I told you to sit him if he played. He played. If you played him, I'm sorry you missed out on that one. But that's my accuracy update for week 4. Let's roll right in to some guys that are already ruled out for week 5. First up, we got Tua Tagovailoa. Scary incident last week with Tua, but he was cleared to go home with the team. He is technically in concussion protocol right now, but the team has already ruled him out for this week. Probably a good move. If he had played, I think there would have been an uproar. So Tua already out for the week. Cordero Patterson, we've been talking about him the last few weeks. He's dealing with this knee injury. Well, he ended up needing a knee scope on that injury. He has been placed on IR. He's going to be out for about 4 weeks. I kind of like Tyler Algier while Patterson's out, but only a flex option for me this week against the Bucs run defense. May not be the week for Tyler Algier, but maybe next week. Jonathan Taylor, I know this one happened last night, but he's dealing with a low ankle sprain. There was some concern. Maybe it was a high ankle sprain. Maybe it was a low ankle sprain. It sounds like it is a low ankle sprain. He was already ruled out before last night's game, so hopefully you guys got him out of your lineups, but the MRI was negative. It sounds like this might be a case where Taylor could be back as soon as next week. We're hoping for that. We're praying for that because we want Jonathan Taylor healthy for our fantasy teams. Last up, we got Jamison Crowder. He's dealing with an ankle fracture. He's on IR now. I'm not really expecting him to return anytime soon, if at all this season. He's droppable, even in dynasty leagues. I just don't think Jamison Crowder has it anymore. Guy can't stay healthy. A shame, but technically not ruled out for the year, so I can't technically pour one out for Jamison Crowder, but just know I don't think he needs to be on any fantasy teams as of right now. All right, rolling first with the quarterbacks. First up, we got Tom Brady dealing with shoulder and finger issues. He's already come out and said he plans on playing. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. He actually blew up at the end of last week's game, so Tom Brady could be a decent start this week for fantasy. I did see some reports that he and his wife have gotten divorce lawyers, so I do wonder a little bit if his head is in the game right now. Obviously, he should still play, but I am a little worried about his mental health as much as I'm worried about his physical health at this point. I mean, when you're dealing with divorce, that has to affect the way that you play on Sundays. So I know he's going to do his job. He always has. But I do wonder where his head is at. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't 100% locked into this game. Or maybe he is. It's hard to say. I don't know Tom Brady personally. I just know what I'm reading in reports, and it sounds like something I'd be a little concerned about personally. The guy who replaced Tom Brady, or I guess filled in for Tom Brady after he left, Mac Jones, he's been dealing with a high ankle sprain. A little bit of a surprise, but Jones was able to practice this week in limited fashion. That's a good sign for him. If he can get 2 more days of practice in, I think there's a good chance that he actually plays this week, even though there was reports that this was a pretty serious ankle injury, maybe not as bad as he made it seem when he was crying into the locker room. It's pretty important for the Pats, though, because Brian Hoyer, Mac Jones' backup, isn't practicing yet. He left the game with a concussion. Just doesn't look like Brian Hoyer is going to be ready. So Mac Jones, we're hoping he's in, but the team is, I don't expect him, the team or him, to really be playing at all cylinders because of this ankle injury. Next up, we got Jameis Winston. He's dealing with 4 fractures in his back. Trip to London was not kind to Winston last week. He did make the trip, but was ruled out on Saturday. Still not practicing yet this week. Doesn't look like he's going to play. Jameis Winston just can't seem to get healthy. I think he needs a few more weeks off to really get this back straightened up and feeling a little bit better. Dak Prescott, little update for him. He is starting to throw a little bit. He had the right thumb surgery after a fracture in week 1. Technically, though, he's not officially practicing yet. So the team keeps winning, and I think that's good for Dak. It means that they can afford to sit him a few more weeks instead of trying to rush him back. I'm kind of looking at week 8 as a possible return date for Prescott at this time based on his injury timeline and just based on what the team kind of expected. They did say they expect him back before the bye week. So I think week 8 makes the most sense for Dak Prescott. Daniel Jones is dealing with an ankle sprain. Jones left the game on Sunday, was able to get limited practice in this week. I'm expecting him to play, just probably not as mobile as he normally is. His backup, Tyrod Taylor, also dealing with a concussion. We've got a lot of backups with concussions right now. Taylor is not practicing as of Thursday, but we know that concussions can be tricky. So it's possible that he could play, but I'm expecting him to be out this week. The team has already said they're looking for backups to possibly sign as kind of a last-minute call-up. So Tyrod Taylor, not expecting him to play, but it looks like Daniel Jones will be healthy, so they may not need a backup anyway. All right, moving on to tight end next. We got a few guys to talk about here. The most important guy, though, is Kyle Pitts. He's dealing with a hamstring strain, has not practiced as of Thursday. And I'm going to bet right now that he is not going to play on Sunday. His 2 fantasy points per game is going to be really sorely missed kind of in all my squads. But don't worry, I'm totally not bitter about that at all. Kyle Pitts, get healthy, please. Get healthy, and please come back and score my fantasy teams some points. Hit me down in the comments below if you would like Kyle Pitts to come back and score some fantasy points for your team as well. Let's move on to Darren Waller. He's dealing with a shoulder sprain. Waller apparently has been banged up for the last few weeks. Hasn't really showed up on injury reports, but was seen in a non-contact jersey on Wednesday. It looks like Darren Waller is going to play, but I am a little concerned that maybe this is the reason why Waller has underperformed the last couple weeks. Is he more banged up than what they are letting on? They've got him in non-contact jerseys. He did ditch that on Thursday, but again, the fact that they're trying to protect his shoulder, it sounds like, is a little concerning. I do think he's a pretty risky start as a tight end. One, I think he's probably trending more towards that tight end 2. If you have a better option, I wouldn't be afraid to use it this week. Last up for tight ends, we got Gerald Everett. He's dealing with a hamstring strain, was limited on Thursday. No injury designation on Wednesday, though. So not a good sign that he got downgraded to an injury designation. Donald Parham is back and healthy and should play. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm going to update you guys on Keenan Allen in a little bit. But I think this could set up for a big week for Mike Williams. So he's one that I think should be making it into your lineups this week, especially with Gerald Everett and Keenan Allen both banged up. All right, next up, we got wide receivers. And the first one I want to talk about is Treylon Burks. He's dealing with turf toe. Titans rookie suffered this injury late in the fourth quarter. If you bought my rookie injury guide this summer, you would know that Burks had one of the highest injury risks in the wide receiver class for rookies this season. Not a good sign that we're already seeing this pop up in his NFL career. No surgery is good for Burks. It's a good thing, but the median return time for a turf toe injury is 4 weeks in the NFL. So we're looking at about 2 to 6 weeks in terms of timeline, but just know on average, we're looking at about 4 weeks missed for this injury specifically. And I just don't think this is an injury where a guy comes back and is wildly successful afterwards. We just rarely see that with turf toe injuries specifically. They're trying to rush it back. It's still hurt. You didn't get the surgery. Could still be some risk down the road for Treylon Burks with this turf toe injury. It's just not looking good for a rookie season. This is something that could definitely ruin his fantasy season for sure. Tyreek Hill dealing with a quad strain. He was healthy on Wednesday, but then downgraded to limited on Thursday. We don't like to see downgrades in the middle of the week. At least Tyreek Hill did practice, so that's a good sign. I still think he's going to play. I'm really hoping that we get to see a matchup with him and Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner is one of the better rookie cornerbacks to come out in a while. He's 6'2", ran a 4.41 140. So he's kind of a big, tall, stretched out version of Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's a little bit smaller. Sauce Gardner, big dude, long wingspan, still really, really fast. I want to see how he matches up against Tyreek Hill. And I think Tyreek Hill may have a little something to prove. He doesn't believe that his quarterback matters at all. No Tua. So I think Tyreek Hill could be trying to prove a point that he is quarterback proof, and he's going to do it with whoever is throwing him the ball. Next up, we got Michael Thomas dealing with his right toe sprain. Just like I talked about with Burks, you're looking at about 4 weeks with toe injuries. So this one, he's already missed 1 week. Still not practicing as of Thursday. Looks like he's heading towards another missed week for Michael Thomas. Chris Olave, obviously a starter until Michael Thomas comes back. It doesn't look like Thomas is going to be back this week. So Chris Olave definitely gets the start for me. Julio Jones dealing with that partial PCL tear he's been dealing with for most of the season. Actually got hurt in week 1. He did play last week. I didn't expect him to do very much. He did not do very much. Didn't look that great coming off that injury. I'm still sitting him this week, even though I do think he will find the field once again. Amon-Ra St. Brown dealing with an ankle sprain that he suffered in week 3. Sat out last week, just as I predicted he would. But doesn't look like he's coming back this week either. I think that with him not practicing, the team has a week 6 bye. I think there could be plans in place for Amon-Ra St. Brown to come back after the bye week with this ankle injury, make him let him have some time to get healthy. We know that the Lions are not really technically trying to compete this year. Kyle will probably fight me about this, but I think I know enough about what the team has done and said with their draft picks and after the draft to know that they are not really eyeballing this year as the year for them specifically, but the offense is humming. So at least they're scoring points even with Amon-Ra St. Brown still out. Another guy I think is going to miss this week is Keenan Allen. He's dealing with a hamstring strain. Got a limited practice in last Wednesday, but then left practice on Thursday. Has not practiced since. Not a good sign. We know that hamstring injuries are most likely to re-injure during the first 2 weeks of ramping back up. So not practicing. I think the team could opt to shut him down until after their bye week in week 8. And that's just, kind of giving you guys a heads up. We could be out without Keenan Allen for a while. So just buckle down and we're just going to have to be patient with Keenan Allen. At least Mike Williams is going to get a little bit of a bump while he is out. Jacoby Myers back practicing after missing 2 games. He's still limited, but it's a step in the right direction. I think we could maybe see him suit up this week, but I'm not totally confident. I'm going to go like 40% likely that he plays. I still think it's more likely that he sits and they give him a couple more weeks to get fully healthy. Curtis Samuel's dealing with an illness. Illness is pretty tough to gauge for me. I mean, there's just no real knowing of how bad this illness is. He's not practicing. Technically, he doesn't have to practice to play on Sunday, but are you going to start a guy that's been sick all week and then has to go out and perform at an elite level? I'm just not seeing. I'm probably just sitting Curtis Samuel and dealing with the consequences after the fact, unless we hear something like he's practicing and looks really, really good. Marquise Brown, he's dealing with a foot sprain. Didn't practice on Wednesday, got a limited session in Thursday. He came up really big in week 4 against the Panthers. I expect him to play again this week and be productive once again. Rashad Bateman, he's also dealing with a foot sprain. Bateman, I'm a little less optimistic about. He only played in 44% of his team's offensive snaps in week 4. Noticeably absent from the last few drives. Bills came back and won that game. But Bateman hasn't practiced yet this week. Foot injuries are tricky to recover from. It's just really hard to rehab the foot. There's a lot going on down there, and it's just not something that we see happen very quickly. I'm going to bet that Rashad Bateman could miss this game, which pushes Mark Andrews into that elite tight end tier once again in DFS, and Devin Duvernay. I think could be a solid, kind of a dart throw PPR flex option if your team's really hurting due to injury, which how can you not be with all these injury updates? Another guy that is expected to miss this week is Jahan Dotson. He's dealing with a hamstring strain, not practicing, working with trainers on the sideline. This is pretty classic, not going to play for a while. Jahan Dotson, hamstring strain, do not expect him to play this week. Hunter Renfrow is dealing with a concussion that's kept him out for 2 games. The good news is he is back practicing, and I do expect him to play. So good news for Hunter Renfrow coming back. Hopefully he can pick up some of the slack that has been missing in that offense. I'm still waiting for the Raiders to really pop off offensively. I just don't really understand what's happening. The offense should be better, but it's not scoring enough points for my liking. T. Higgins dealing with an ankle sprain. He's been beat up this year. It seems like every single game or every Sunday, it seems like T. Higgins, I get an update on my phone, T. Higgins is leaving with the trainer. T. Higgins is hurt on the field. And it's just, I'm getting kind of sick of that. I don't want to see T. Higgins hurt. He's too good to be hurt all the time. He played fine in week 4. I expect him to play through this and again. And I just think that he's a solid start as long as he's playing, even with these, kind of constantly being banged up. I think T. Higgins is one of the better starts that you can have week to week in your wide receiver 2 spot. Last up, 2 guys. I don't really know if these guys are fantasy relevant anymore, but Kadarius Toney, Kenny Galladay, dealing with hamstring and knee sprains respectively. Neither of these guys has practiced this week. They didn't even fly on the plane to London, so they're obviously not playing, neither one of them. I don't know if they're fantasy relevant anymore. It's just worth knowing that the Giants are pretty banged up at the wide receiver room. And, I didn't put this in the defensive nuggets, but Jair Alexander is expected to come back. And that could be bad news for all the other wide receivers for the Giants this week. I'm pretty much out on that passing offense. The quarterback's hurt. None of the wide receivers are really playing. And if your name's not Saquon Barkley, I don't really want anything to do with you. All right, up next, we got the running backs. We're going to start with DeAndre Swift. He's dealing with an AC sprain and ankle injuries. Hasn't practiced yet. Not going to play this week. The team has already said they really don't expect him to come back until after the bye week. So we're looking at about week 7. Just be patient with DeAndre Swift. He's going to come back. We actually want him to get healthy. He has a history of missing games, so we need him healthy. We don't want to have to try to push this and then him miss even more time after the bye. Just take the lumps and let him come back healthy and let him be a stud again. Breece Hall dealing with a knee sprain. Described as just kind of nicks and bruises. I'm not super concerned about this. I still expect him to play and be effective, but we could maybe possibly see a little bit more Michael Carter mixed in, but I think it's Breece Hall. He's the one that I want to start week to week in this offense. David Montgomery's dealing with an ankle sprain, kept him out in week 4, was limited on Thursday. But that's his first practice since he came back from the injury. I do think he's pacing towards playing, but I don't think he's going to be the workhorse this week. So I'm still probably sending him for Khalil Herbert in week 5, but it's good to see that David Montgomery is expected to come back and play most likely this week. Alvin Kamara dealing with that rib cartilage fracture. I already talked a little bit about this, but really disappointing to see him get ruled out so early. Just know that Kamara does plan on playing in week 5. He said he's come out and said he's going to play. I trust him, but I don't trust him at the same time. I think that he will play, but for a fantasy perspective, I just don't know how you can expect him, even in a great matchup. I'm a little hesitant. I would put him more as a flex RB3 as opposed to what his matchup maybe says, which would be a pretty high-end RB1. I just don't know. I'm not sure I trust Alvin Kamara just quite yet. And we only really have one more update for the running backs, which is a little bit surprising. But Brian Robinson, this isn't really technically an injury update. It's more of a status update, I guess. He did have that gunshot wound, which was a pretty serious. It got, somebody tried to, I think, steal his car, had a gunshot wound, and Robinson is back practicing. Has not officially been announced that he's going to play this week, but just know that he was on pace to be the starter prior to that altercation. So Brian Robinson, if he doesn't play this week, very much on pace to return in the next 2 weeks. Maybe a guy I'm checking the waiver wire for in most leagues. If you've got a spot where somebody's really been underperforming, we're 4 weeks in, you can give up on those guys now. Get a guy like a Brian Robinson who could be a starter for your team sooner rather than later, than hold on to a guy that's just chronically underperforming for your fantasy squads. I do have a couple kicker updates. I know you guys love the kickers. First up, we got the Eagles kicker, Jake Elliott. He's already been ruled out with an ankle sprain, so just know that if you're starting Jake Elliott, you're going to need a new kicker. And then Harrison Butker dealing with a left ankle sprain, still not practicing after he got a limited work in last week. Sounds like he may have re-aggravated this ankle injury, so he's unlikely to play. Just know that Harrison Butker most likely not playing. He plays on a Monday anyway, so are you really going to risk going into Monday night with Harrison Butker as your kicker? I don't think you should. I would just plan on replacing him like you have the last 4 weeks. We do have a couple defensive nuggets I think you guys need to know about. First up, we got Xavier Howard, cornerback from Miami. He's dealing with a groin strain, hasn't practiced yet this week. If he sits, I'm pretty confident that Garrett Wilson could be the guy. Currently second in the NFL right now in red zone targets, just behind Devontae Adams. That surprised me when I found that stat. I think you guys should know about it. He did have a down week in week 4, but he did get open, just had some really good defensive plays, kind of shot the ball out and didn't let him catch it. So credit the defense, my Steelers defense, last week for limiting Garrett Wilson a little bit, even though we still lost the game. I just know that if Xavier Howard's sitting, I think Garrett Wilson could have a really nice week this week. Speaking of my Steelers, their entire secondary is hurt right now. Witherspoon, Terrell Edmonds, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace, all hurt, all on the injury report. I do expect Minkah to play, but if those other guys are kind of up in the air, that's 5 cornerbacks / safeties that are all at risk of missing or being limited this week. I think we could see huge games for the Bills from Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, Gabe Davis is finally back practicing fully after dealing with an ankle sprain the last few weeks. In fact, head on over to Prize Picks. Use the code Headliners. They're going to deposit match up to your first $100 in deposits. Slam the over on Stephon Diggs this week. His prop is only at 78.5 receiving yards. I think there's no chance that Stephon Diggs doesn't hit 100 receiving yards with how bad the Steelers secondary is. And I think the Bills are going to look to absolutely crush my Steelers and my hopes and dreams. So that's it, guys. Week 5 injury show is in the books. If there's anybody I missed, anybody you want me to talk about, leave me a comment down below. I love interacting with you guys in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications so that you can get your injury update show every single week. As always, thank you to our sponsors, Fantrax, Prize Picks. Head over to Manscaped. Get yourself 20% off and free shipping using the code Headliners. But that's it, guys. The doc is out.